Grab your cup of coffee. Sit down for a story. Let's all go exploring. Making it after 40. Making it after 40. Making it after 40.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Making It After 40 podcast. I am your host, Lisa Rodriguez. I am an actor and writer who is still trying to make it after the age of 40. On this show, we explore what it means to be an artist trying to make it as a middle-aged person. Thank you, everyone, for all your love and support for this podcast. I continue to be in awe of how much you all love this show and what it's doing for our little artist community. So, thank you for being here with me, artists and non-artists alike. On today's show, we have an old friend of mine, Adam Burch. Adam is an actor, a writer. He's even a fiction book writer and a producer. And now Adam is in law school at USC, so he's becoming a lawyer. This is an interesting discussion because Adam is very practical about his view of acting and specifically the entertainment industry. So if you're looking for something a little more grounded and a little less never give up, Adam can offer you that. For my part, I can really see both sides of the coin. In our house, we teach the kids to never give up, but we also say that it's okay to take a break or try again later. But in the long run, never give up. One small note, Adam had some activity going on outside of his apartment, so you'll hear some chainsaws in the background at one point during the conversation, but it's gone just as quickly as it shows up. And with that, please enjoy the show. The movie theater and stuff like that. But before that, I've always done high-rise buildings. So I was managing like high-rise buildings in downtown LA and Glendale. And
my good buddy is a real estate attorney, and he does like commercial properties like that. And he was an actor before he retired from acting. He was in a movie with John Leguizamo where he played John Leguizamo's brother.
Oh wow!
Like, it was John Leguizamo. Harvey Keitel was in the movie.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and then he was like, "Nope, I'm just going to go to law school."
So that's so many people who end up doing that. They have like a nice little career, and then they're like, you know what? That's not for me.
I would have liked it if I had his nice little career.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It is funny. I mean, that's kind of part of like why I started the podcast, because I think like there's those of us that just keep that we're just still going at it. I don't know, maybe we're masochists, but
right,
we just can't let it go.
Or delusional, or
it could be delusions.
Yeah.
And then there's like some people who I think they like give it their best shot. They work and then they realize, nah, I need something else. And
yeah, sometimes
don't you kind of wish that you could be one of those people where you could just be like, yeah, I'm okay with letting this go, and I'm gonna go like have a stable job with.
For sure. I mean, as long as whatever I was doing, I was like completely fulfilled by. But I think that like for me, the idea of being in the story like that, I don't think that'll ever really leave me, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Even just making the story for me, like I've been doing a lot more writing lately.
Yeah.
And like I think even if I'm just making the story, even if I'm not in front of the camera, I'm okay with that. Because, sometimes you have like for me, I've been kind of looking at like, okay, like I'm a good actor. I do some good work, but I also know that the competition is so high and there are great actors who can do things that I don't do. So then I wonder, well, maybe that's not my role. Not to say that I won't give that up completely, but
right. Well, and I mean, the other aspect of it is, regardless of their talent versus your talent, or what they can do so much or whatever, it's also just like at a certain point, you need to have a number of credits to be competitive in that area. You know what I mean? And I don't know what your resume is, but like, I know that my resume is not nearly as good as I am. So like, there are roles that I could definitely play and be great at, but I'm not even going to be considered for them. So,
Yeah. My resume is does not show show what I'm capable of for sure. Like, I know you have TV credits, you have film credits, and like my stuff is all just self-produced content. I don't have any legit credits yet, but that's what we're
Well,
working on.
let me say, I mean, it's always hard to think of your own stuff as legit, because if it's
Mm,
not put through the machine of the industry, be that, movies, TV, books, whatever that is. Like, if you don't land with a big producer, there is something about it that doesn't feel real, like you haven't, quote unquote, made it, right?
yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
I did have an acting teacher once who was like, don't denigrate your own stuff. It's just as legit as these other things. It's just,
Yeah.
you don't have the millions of dollars behind it to force it in front of a bunch of people. That's like,
Yeah.
so don't, I wouldn't say that it's not legit,
Yeah.
it's just, but you're right. You're right. Like, if you don't have credits from TV shows that people recognize, you're not going to be brought in for a guest star, or,
Right. Yeah.
or a series regular. It's just never going to happen. Like, and the older you get, unfortunately, the more that counts against you, because it's like, well, why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. Where have you been? Why haven't you been on set? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What's wrong? Like, what?
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not good enough. I
Yeah.
mean, that's sort of the implication, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I do think some of that's changing, and I think the casting workshops help with that. It's nice to be able to get in front of people and do some training in that way. But I mean, I don't think that's like, I think it's a few one-off folks who are like willing to take the chance, right?
Yeah, I think it's super dependent on who you're in front of and what their
Yeah.
mentality is, because
Yeah.
I've been to every casting director workshop that you can imagine and met people where it really is open like that, and they do need that. A lot of times it's because they need to fill roles because they're a procedural or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
they just need new bodies, and that's
Yeah.
great. But on the other hand, I've also been into them where it's like an associate who is just out of college, who doesn't even really have power in the office, and on top of it they say, yeah, if you don't have multiple credits already, our office is not even going to consider you.
Mhm.
I've interned in casting offices, and everybody that they brought in, even for like a little co-star, was like they were repped by William Morrison Dever,
Yeah.
CAA. Like, they were repped by the biggest agencies in
Yeah.
town. And I mean, this was a while ago, so uh the good news is they can see a little more people in a
Mhm.
session on when it's self-tape, but like they're still not going to see more than, I don't know, 25 people. Um, and if 20 of them or 25 of them are repped by those big agencies, that's who's getting seen. So,
Mhm.
it just but there's no other choice really, other than to like get in front of them and hope they're the type of person who responds to your work and then calls you in.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I've had some success with that. It's been nice. I've gotten a couple of auditions after doing a workshop. The ones, and I've done the ones through the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and I find that those
Mm-hmm.
casting directors tend to be more open to that.
And they're free
And
through
those ones are
SAG-AFTRA,
free.
that helps too, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So, but I mean, this is great because this kind of like leads into what you've got going on. So, Adam and I met at UCSD. That's where we both did our undergrad degrees. We were both
Mm-hmm.
theater studies majors. And after that, Adam, I was 1 year ahead of you, right? You graduated in 2002?
Yes. So
Or
you were 1 year ahead of me, and also I should say I actually was not a theater major.
oh,
I
you
was
weren't?
a
You were just
I
like
was
doing
not.
all the theater stuff? Okay.
Yeah, I was a communications media major, so I wanted to do
Oh,
something like in entertainment media. And I think
yeah.
originally I had the idea of being like in journalism or something like that.
Yeah.
And I got into school and I liked the major at first, and then it kind of started to bore me. But at
Yeah.
that point I had already taken some classes, and I didn't know if I wanted to switch to something else or double major, and I ended up doing all the plays and being
Yeah.
involved in that. So that's how that happened.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't realize that. Well, do you remember, and I can't remember her last name, Summer. She was in the theater group. She had long blonde hair. Okay. So remember
I
when
remember her.
yeah, so when we were graduating at the end of it, she said to me, like everybody's like, "What are you going to do?" And everybody's like, "I'm going to New York. I'm going to LA." And she's like, "I'm going to law school." And I was like, "Wait, what? You're a theater studies major and you're going to law school." And so I just thought that was kind of funny, because it does seem like so many theater people end up doing law, as you are now yourself in law school.
Well, I think there's definitely some crossover with the skill sets, at least at a very early level, depending. I mean, I have another friend who was at UC San Diego who was involved like with the Mirror musical and stuff. Her name's Stephanie Little, and she ended up going to USC Law School, and now she's like in-house counsel at Tesla.
Oh, lucky her. The in-house counsel. My lawyer friend said that's the way to go, is be.
She's doing all right. She's doing all right. But like as far as speaking in front of groups of people, there's a lot of people who go to law school who actually don't have that skill set. I would say, so if you want to be a litigator and you want to be a trial attorney, like being an actor is not the worst thing, or having a theater degree is not the worst thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other skills and knowledge involved, and there's a lot of areas of law. So that's not, in law, as they would say, it's not dispositive, but, but yeah, I mean, like, so it's not too far off the mark. And that's certainly something that I was thinking about. And writing is sort of the other skill that lawyers utilize quite often.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us how you ended up at this place now? Because you kind of are a bit of a jack of all trades. You
master of none. So I'll go. So I graduated from UC San Diego in 2002, I guess a year after you. I moved to LA. For me, it was sort of like my graduating class they were all like, we're moving to LA and we're becoming actors. And that was like everybody. And I was like, well, you guys can't do that. And I'm not doing that. I'm better than you guys, or I'm just as good, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and fast forward to now, like almost none of them are acting anymore, with one or two exceptions.
I heard Mia has a really great voiceover career.
Does she?
That's what I heard.
I know Ivy is still acting.
Ivy's still here. Yeah.
She was in a play recently, but like Nick Triplett, he became a lawyer. Like he went to law school. He went to law school. I mean, he was somebody I actually talked to briefly about it, and he was very positive about the experience. So anyway, I moved up in 2002 and started acting, and that eventually led to being part of a really cool writers group on the West Side that had some heavy hitting like showrunners in it and so forth. And I was kind of an actor in the group, and one of the writers in the group one time like called me to ask my opinion about his writing, and it turned out I was like really good at giving other writers notes
on
how to improve their material.
Yeah.
And so then I had the idea, well, like I should be a writer, like maybe I could write. And so I started writing, and you learn very quickly it's so much easier to find the flaws in other people's work than it is to actually generate really good work yourself.
Yeah.
But I started doing that, and like I wrote a couple of things and filmed them like shorts and so forth. And I wrote a like a pilot, and all the while I was working like office jobs, and my office jobs were always in theater. So I worked at the Geffen Playhouse, and then I worked at the Center Theater Group. And all the time I'm going like, hey, can you give me an audition? And the casting people would be like, no. So anyway, I was writing, and I remember one time I was at Center Theater Group, and I was I was selling tickets and I was there later at night, and this guy called and I handled his order. And, I had become like, I'd worked my way up a little bit to where I was handling like the really wealthy people who donated money to the theater. So I speak to him on the phone. He says, you're really capable. Like, I talk to a lot of people on the phone all day long, and a lot of them are idiots, and you don't seem like an idiot. And I said, well, I appreciate the compliment, sir.
Yeah.
And I said something like, well, I hope I'm not doing this forever.
Yes.
Because, I after a few years, like any customer service position, I'm sure any server will tell you, anybody who's in a phone job will tell you, it can really suck your soul. But I was in a place where I felt like I had to stay there because they would let me go for auditions. And at that point I had a mortgage, and I felt a little stuck. But anyway, I had this call, and he says, you're not an idiot. And I go, thank you. Hopefully I'm not doing this forever. And he said, well, what do you really do? And I said, well, I'm an actor and I'm a writer. And he goes, you're a writer? Do you want me to? He says, I'm a producer at Paramount.
Oh,
I'll read your work if you're willing to sign an NDA.
That's generous.
Yeah, he was very generous. And so I immediately sent him what I had. And, I had to bother him a little bit, but eventually he got back to me, and he spent a good half an hour to 40 minutes on the phone with me. I remember I was in the grocery store, shopping, and I, it was I'd been waiting to hear from this person.
Yeah.
So as soon as he called me, I had to take the call. I didn't want to say oh, can I talk to you later? I'm in the store right now. So anyway,
you drop everything.
Right. Right. I'm grabbing granola and price, comparing items and so forth. And he's telling me, but eventually what he tells me is kind of it's a pass. I don't your work's not good enough. But what he kind of also added was, don't give up, because I can tell it's you're on the right track. It's not good enough now. He said something that his analogy was something you're the best basketball player on your high school basketball team, and now you want to play in the NBA, and you're not quite ready for the NBA yet, but I can tell that you might be in a little while.
If you keep at it.
Yeah. So that was, that was encouraging. And so one of the things that I kind of ended up doing, I'm working at Center Theater Group. I'm answering phones, and, I was in this writer actors group, and one of my good friends from that group, his name's Philip Eisner, and he wrote the movie Event Horizon.
Oh, wow.
And he actually just had a #1 movie on Netflix several months ago with Jason Momoa starring in it. It's called Sweet Girl. It's still on Netflix. You can watch it.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, so he said, I really like to do role-playing D&D style games. Would you like to be part of the group? And I said, sure. I've never done that, but it sounds fun. So, we had some sessions where we came up with a story, and we had a group of people, and there were some cool people in that group. There's a guy, Matt Mercer, who is on a show, Vox Machina. It's Critical Role is the name of his show. And that's all about, actors, and they're doing D&D style games, and he's the game master. He and his wife, Marisha, they are. So anyway, he was in that group, and a couple of other cool actors I know, my friend Samantha, Abby Wilde, who used to be on this show on Nickelodeon. I think it was Zoe 101 that she was on. So anyway, we're all part of this, and we had this group, and we were a group of adventurers and so forth, and it was a sci-fi setting. And I started writing journal entries for my character. And eventually, like most things in adult life and in LA specifically, we could no longer meet because people had too many other commitments and so forth. And I was so bummed, and I wanted the story to continue. I started writing the story past the game sessions that we played while I was sitting at work in between phone calls. And, so I eventually ended up having a book manuscript because I'd been sitting there for so long and writing
Oh,
little journal
wow.
entries and so forth. And, you know, I decided, well, like maybe I could do something with this. And I queried agents and they all rejected me. And then I kind of like reworked it and had some readers give me notes. And,
Yeah.
like after a year, I sent it out again. And there was one agent who really liked it.
Yeah.
And then that agent sent it to a bunch of publishers. They all said no, except for one.
Okay.
And that person really liked it.
Yeah.
And so then I got a book deal
That's
based
awesome.
on this thing that I'd written.
That's Book of Solomon, right?
Close. Yeah. It's
Oh.
book. It's Song of Edmund. You're
Song
close.
of
So you're
Edmund.
thinking,
I
like,
don't know why it was
yeah.
Book of Solomon. Song of Edmund.
Well, because there's a Song of Solomon from the Bible.
That's okay. That's what my brain did.
Yeah.
But I remember when you were promoting that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, so what happened was that this all kind of happened at once where like I got this book agent and then he was shopping the manuscript out. And then I had a friend who was working at Universal Studios Singapore who was like, "Hey, do you want me to submit your stuff?"
Yeah.
And like an audition. I'd always said no because I didn't want to like leave LA and the chance to work in TV and film and go work at a theme park halfway across the world in Asia. That like wasn't really something of interest, but I was so burnt out on answering telephone calls that I was like, yes, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And so I auditioned and they made me audition several times and I booked that job where I basically played Donkey from Shrek.
Right.
I was the voice of Donkey from Shrek in a sort of like live show where I was controlling an animated character.
Yeah.
There's footage of this if you look it up on YouTube of this thing in Singapore. So I got this job. So within like 2 months, I like got a book agent, got this job in Singapore, and then, ended up leaving for over a year to live overseas and do this job while I was writing like the next book. And I flew back and did the audiobooks in America. So like I had to fly all the way. I had to fly from Singapore to Michigan to do these audiobooks of all places. And
but that's cool that you got to do your own audiobooks because that's not always the case.
Well, I insisted because I'm an actor and, they were going to pay, it paid like several $1,000s. And I'm like, why am I going to let somebody else collect that?
Good. I'm glad you insisted.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, who knows it better than me? And I would say if there was something weird about the book where it wouldn't make sense for me to narrate it, I wouldn't, I don't know. Like I feel like if there's a female protagonist or something like that, like maybe a woman's voice is going to be more appropriate, but there was no reason for this one that it should be anybody else but me.
Yeah.
And, I had to audition for that though.
You had an audition.
Yeah. Cause they didn't trust me, like that's this whole thing. It's like, I wrote the book. You guys know I'm an actor. And they're like, yeah, well, could you send us like some files of you reading stuff?
Sample.
Yeah, and even then, what I found out was like, so my first experience, they had a director in the booth.
Yeah.
Going like, take that back, do that line again, that kind of thing. And I found out they don't always do that but they do it with authors that they're not sure are going to be able to like perform it. Because not every author is also an actor. So
yeah,
I was like, I learned later because when I did it for my second book, it was just me and the engineer. And I was like, there's no director. And they're like, nah, you don't need one. And I was like, okay.
That's funny.
I see. You didn't trust me the first time. I got it. Now great. You trust me enough. You don't want to pay extra money for somebody else to be here.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that happened. I was overseas for like just over a year. And then I had a choice. I'm like, so do I stay there? Do I, it was kind of a cush job. It wasn't super motivating for me artistically, but it was certainly like a good paycheck and steady pay. But, like I kind of had to say to myself, I'm like, that's not what I'm in the game of life for either. Some people kind of want like the chill job and just be like, living comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
I just really, I wanted to be in film and TV. And like you said, whether that was acting or writing and so forth. So anyway, I moved back, and that was, I got back here in LA around 2018.
Okay.
And then I was like, okay, this is all I'm going to do. I have enough money saved up that I am just going to write and act, and I'm going to do nothing else.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that was a huge mistake, but but I mean, what ended up happening is I did like 3 or 4 plays. Like
Okay.
the first year I was back, like I wasn't getting cast in TV and film. I did
Yeah.
get cast in plays, and as you know, like theater in LA doesn't pay very much.
Yeah. No.
It was sort of artistically filling. I did a show with Sacred Fools. I did a show at the
Oh.
Fountain Theater, and I got to meet, because we were in the play together, Troy Kotzer, who is the deaf actor who won Best Supporting Actor for the Oscars at Coda.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
like I was his voice
Oh,
in
that's cool.
an original play. So he signed, and
Yeah.
I did the voice acting basically.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I did a show up in Berkeley, which was a play adaptation of the book Everything is Illuminated.
Oh, yeah.
And so I got to that. That was like the end of, I guess that was the end of 2018 going to 2019 or so. So like beginning of 2019, I kind of said, okay, I can keep bouncing from like theater gig to theater gig,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not getting anywhere like in movies and TV. And as far as writing goes, I had a couple of book manuscripts rejected.
Yeah.
I had a screenplay that finished in like it was like the top 10% of the Nickel Fellowship, which is one of the more like at least recognized screenplay competitions. But like unless you crack the top 10, like top 10% is great. Or no, it was even more than top 10%. It was like quarter finalist or something like that.
Yeah.
So like anyway, and I had a couple screenplays like that got like they were kind of
close,
in the like in the top. Yeah, they were in the top bracket, but like unless you're in that top 5, 10, like you're not seeing any money. And I had some management like bites, but like ultimately they were like it was a pass. And so I was kind of just reevaluating everything. And there's been seismic shifts in the industry on all levels. So like from the acting side, 2016, like the DA cracked down on the workshops, and several casting directors like pled guilty and got fined in community service. So a lot of those opportunities like went away. They still have them, but it's less than it was. The Actors Equity 99 seat contract was renegotiated, and basically they got rid of that. So it's far more expensive to do small theater in Los Angeles, and I think there's less of it now, although there are some different workarounds. And then technology has changed significantly, and some of this is post-COVID where everything's streaming. So most of the shows in streaming are like 10 episodes. You kind of have a core cast. And that's a lot different than network TV, where there would be like 20 plus episodes a season for like a procedural, where you would need like a brand new perp or victim like every every episode. So like but just
but then also like even with the streaming, when they do have a guest star or a co-star, now these seasoned recognizable actors want those roles too. So like
exactly,
good luck if you're a newbie.
Also because movies have changed as well. It kind of used to be that like I think even Natalie Portman had said at one point like don't do TV. Because like TV was sort of like not as prestigious, and movies were where it's at. But like that has really changed too, because you've got the foreign market driving so much of Hollywood and streaming, having people stay at home,
Yeah.
essentially the only movies that are making it to the theater are like huge blockbusters,
Yeah.
which are, you know, generally, I don't want to say star driven, because like aside from Tom Cruise, nobody is like, or maybe Brad Pitt, nobody's like opening a film anymore.
Yeah.
And it's really about like robots smashing buildings, and like, cause that plays in no matter what country you're in.
Yeah.
Or like horror. So like if you're on the low budget side, you can be in like horror movies that still has an
Yeah.
audience. But so film roles, you know, sort of like mid-level kind of films, family dramas, like a lot of that went away as far as film went. It's gone to TV.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like a 10 episode thing, and like you said, guest stars, or
Yeah.
even like big names and so forth. So that really changed. And then, you know, another thing that had been going on for a good while is like Me Too, Black Lives Matter,
Yeah.
and like a real push for diversity in the industry, which I think is great. Unfortunately, realistically, looking at the playing field as a white male who's now like in his 40s, I
Mhm.
can't, that's not me. So you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yeah.
so like I have to go, all right, here's where I'm at. Here's what my credits are. Here are the possibilities of things that I can go out for. That's definitely shrinking. You know, what else can I do? And then, you know, COVID happened. And so then everybody is like not
Yeah.
working and so forth. So that's kind of where the idea of law school came from.
Yeah.
You know, so all those things, you know, like I want to have a greater stake in the world, I suppose. I want to be able to flex my intellectual capabilities as much as possible. I want
Yeah.
to be as fulfilled as much as possible. And as much as writing and acting does that, you can only get it if you are cast in stuff,
Yeah.
or if you have a project that, you know, gets picked up and so forth. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like, a man cannot live on bread alone, but if he doesn't have bread, he ain't living, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so you know, I started studying for the LSAT, and you know, by the skin of my teeth, I got kind of a decent score. So I'm at USC, which is a great school.
Yeah.
And still in LA and still sort of industry connected. During COVID, I had the amazing opportunity of a good buddy of mine, Colin Watts, shout out to Colin. And
Yes.
he wrote this movie called This Land, which is
Uh-huh.
a horror film that he got produced, and we did it during the height of COVID. So we were all masked up and everything.
Yeah.
And it's just now being released on streaming on demand. So
Yes.
today you can watch it. If you go on
Yes.
to Amazon Prime and look up This Land,
Oh, that's
you can
awesome.
watch me in the movie. So, you know, like and there's things here and there, like I'll do like a commercial if my schedule allows it, and
Right.
I'm fortunate enough to book it. You know, next I shouldn't say this, but like next week I'm going to be on a quote unquote reality show.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I consider that like. Let me just say this was not my idea. It was my girlfriend's idea, but yeah. So I'm still working, and you know, I'm in law school. I'm working at a law firm. They've got a number of clients who are in the entertainment industry, so that's very interesting. And I think ultimately, you know, I don't know where I will land as far as law goes, but like ideally it would be something like I know how to set up the contracts. I, you know how to form LLCs and production companies, and I can parlay that knowledge into helping other people, as well as, you know, promoting my own work, even if it's just paying the bills so that I can do acting and writing on the side.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, is what do you think your focus will be? I mean, I think that's really great if you can like connect it to your experience as an actor. I know that entertainment law is a huge part of this business because it's so specific.
It is. It's also just as competitive as
Oh.
like as being in the active. Like, you know, that's my idea is like, oh, I'll go back to school and get a legit degree, and then I'll sort of like backdoor in, and then it's sort of like, hey, can I get an internship? You know, working in entertainment law? No, it's like what? Like, so you know, just like anything else, I found that the students who are able to get those jobs, often it is because they know somebody, or I mean, they just have stellar grades and they're really that good. So
Yeah.
it, you know, it can be very competitive in that way. And
Yeah.
Anyhow, you know, I'm finding my way, and the firm that I work for right now is really great, and they've, like I said, they've got they kind of have a pretty diverse practice. They do litigation and then transactional work as well, and you find that most lawyers kind of do one or the other, and they're both interesting in different ways. So
Yeah.
litigation is what kind of most, like, there's sort of a little snobbery around it, going like, these are the real lawyers because these are the ones who go in front of the judge and argue,
Yeah.
you know, argue a case for a client or whoever. And, you know, acting and writing comes in there as well, because you do have to write briefs, you know, outlining your case to the judge or opposing something that the other side has done. And then you do have to argue it in court. So having some sort of charisma and being able to speak publicly is a skill.
Yeah.
As far as entertainment goes, transactional work is more like part and parcel of the industry, in the sense of like negotiating contracts for clients, you know, whether it be an agent contract or contract with a production company or something like that. So that's sort of like more what we're used to in, and I'm sure you probably know, as like from being an actress as well as property manager, like you're probably seeing contracts all day long.
All day long. So I like, give me a lease. I can dissect it. I'll abstract it. I got you covered.
Yep. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. I think what's cool about that, and I think this is kind of the wave for most actors now, is that you have to have a full-time job. And acting, like, even if you're doing it professionally and you're making money, you still have to have the thing that's going to provide you the steady income between the acting jobs. Because like you just said, like, you were booking work at some point in time. I remember you did, you had like a recurring character on, what's that show?
Scandal.
Yes.
Scandal. Yeah. So I was like, they have, again, that's one of those shows where they like need a lot of people. So I was like a reporter, and I was in a couple episodes, and then they actually offered me another episode. It was like right after the date of filming was going to be right after I moved to Singapore. So I couldn't do it. But you know, I already got to put recurring on my resume. So it just would have,
but then like you
been
had a dry spell for a while after that, and you just don't know.
Yeah. I mean, at least in TV and film, I did.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
right. That's what I mean. I
was doing those plays regularly. And the thing about it is too, is like, you know, my girlfriend she did New York first, and she was like, you know, you can actually have a living in New York doing theater. Like, she would have to have a job in between jobs, but there's so many there's so many touring contracts and so forth.
Yeah.
And it was, for her, she said it was like a big surprise when she moved to LA that you had to have a good day job, because you just, like, unless you were a series regular on a TV show, you either weren't working enough or making enough money to, you know, have a sustainable life, really. So I think you're right. You know, I auditioned for Jason Alexander at the Fountain.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, last year. So I was in the middle of law school and like studying for finals, and went to an audition. And I knew I wasn't going to be cast, just because I felt like I was a little too young for the role, but who knows why he didn't cast me. That's my story I'm telling myself.
Yeah.
You know, and I heard him, because he was doing a lot of promotion through the Fountain. Like, there was something that I saw, that like a video they did of him, where he said, you know, the actors who are the happiest are the ones who are able to produce their own work.
Mhm.
or do something else that they really like as well, because
Yeah.
everybody else, it's just sort of like, if you're just hoping that somebody else will give you the chance to do this,
Mhm.
you're going to see like the calendar, roll by.
Yeah.
Those dates fill up pretty quickly, and you're going like, why is nothing happening?
Yeah.
So it was pretty wise. It didn't used to be that way. And I know that when we were in school, like, it was kind of just before a lot of that changed.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically it used to be like, I'm an actor, I shouldn't have to know how to like edit stuff
Mhm.
and film stuff, and
Yeah.
like, what's, how do I upload this from the drive to like,
Yeah.
what codec am I, you didn't have to know any of that stuff. And
No.
now you kind of do, or you have
Yeah.
to have the money to be able to pay somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
So, and that's just the way the world is now.
Yeah. Just acting alone is not enough. You have to be able to do several things. And I think you're right. Being able to make your own content or like do your own shows or something, I think that really does help keep you motivated and help keep you from getting disheartened when you're making something and not just waiting for the phone to ring.
Yeah, and I mean, at the very least, it keeps you, I don't know, like, there's nothing more engaging to me than like being involved in telling a story. So, I mean, the good news about like, if you write, and you've said you've been doing more writing and like,
Mm-hmm.
and so forth, I mean, you're kind of doing everything. You're acting the characters, you're directing the scenes,
Yeah.
you're coming up with the story. I mean, to me, that like writing my books and then doing the audiobook was sort of like one of the most fulfilling experiences I ever had, because it was like something that I had written that was being produced, and then I was performing it as well. Like, I was just sort of like so wholly invested in that.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, at the very least, if you're not making a ton of money from it, you're at least finding, hopefully, a lot of emotional fulfillment from it.
Yeah. How was that for you writing the book? Because I find that to be so inspiring. Like, I think it's so cool that you wrote a book. And I know it just kind of happened naturally in such a unique way. I'm sure if you had like sat down and decided, I'm going to write a book, that would have been a different experience. But because I've had that thought myself, because they often will say, like, if you have a screenplay that you want to write the
Mm-hmm.
book first and then write a screenplay based on your book. So then you have the rights, and that's the best way to like copyright your stuff.
Write the thing like 10 different times in 10 different mediums and formats. And if you break it up into TikToks, that would be even better.
Yeah. So I've thought about that, because
no.
I have one story that I want to write, and I'm like, oh, it would be cool as a novel, but I don't even know how to, like, that just seems like such an overwhelming task.
Well, I mean, do you conceive of it as a screenplay, like, initially?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
you do?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, the good news of writing a novel is that, I mean, you can still follow basic story structure and that kind of rules, but it doesn't have the same format elements that a screenplay would, in terms of like, exterior 1977,
Yeah.
detective blah blah blah, 40s with a blah, like, it doesn't have the same formatting that way. But it is a longer endeavor, in the sense that, screenplay is usually like, they don't want you to go over 110 pages. That's like, that's pushing it there. You got to be in this like 100 page to 110 pages, and you can't be one page over. It's going to get thrown in the trash.
Yeah.
And if it's a comedy, like 95 pages, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a little less restrictive writing a book, but it can be longer, and it's more just like carving out a certain amount of time every day that you just like chip away at it.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of a cliche analogy of, you have a block of marble, and every day you're going to chip at it, and eventually you'll have Michelangelo's David underneath, or whatever, right? You can see the form. But I mean, it is kind of like that. I mean, Neil Gaiman, who's somebody, at least in terms of his writing tips and so forth, that I admire deeply, is like, if you can do the same thing every day, and you sit down and you tell yourself, I don't have to write, but this time I'm either writing or I'm not writing, and there's nothing else I can do.
Yeah.
But like you literally have to do that and just like
Yeah.
chip away and chip away
Yeah.
and chip away at it. And it's even more difficult because then you gotta do a rewrite, and
Yeah.
eventually, like with any creative project, you just have to let it go. It is what it is, and then you move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, in terms of like how I found it, it was, it was probably one of the best experiences of my life, I guess, in the sense that
Yeah.
like I created a story and somebody enjoyed it, somebody who had power to like bring it to an audience, and then I got to like perform it as well. It was almost like doing a one-man show kind of
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, it was a great experience, and if I could replicate it, I absolutely would. I mean, I'm still writing when I can,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
between class. So I've got a manuscript of something else that I've been working on, and maybe somebody will like it, maybe they won't. I
Yeah.
mean, it is cool that you can self-publish stuff now. So,
Mhm.
you can put it out into the universe. How many people will actually read it?
That's different.
Who knows? How many podcast followers do you have, Lisa? You guys all have
Yeah.
to read my self-published book.
Yeah. We'll put it out there. We'll link it. Just send us a link. Yeah.
Right.
That's really cool. That's really interesting. Well, what do you look forward to as you continue to age and develop? And because I mean, you have so many avenues.
She look forward to aging.
I mean, like age into your career, because you're gonna keep acting, and now you have this new career that you're endeavoring on, and hopefully you make another book. What is something that you look forward to as you grow and become even more wise and well versed in your arts?
Well, I like to delude myself into thinking that the only direction to go is up. And, to a certain degree that is true. I mean, obviously I'm not under any illusions that our physical capabilities necessarily expand and grow, but I am very much into self-improvement and becoming the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
And, I still have ambition and drive and goals in terms of having success in acting, in writing, and now in my legal career, particularly as it pertains to my artistic goals.
Yeah.
So, like I have a movie script that I shot a sizzle for right before law school. And my co-star in the sizzle, who would be the co-star in the eventual movie that we would make, he moved back to the Midwest, and he's working a job that potentially could pay off for him like big time.
Yeah.
So without relying on anybody else, I would like to actually produce a movie, something that I wrote. That would be fantastic. And, just taking on new challenges and conquering them, I suppose you could say.
Yeah.
I mean, or like, and challenging yourself and opening yourself up to new experiences.
Yeah.
So obviously law is a hugely new experience for me. It's been extremely challenging. I don't know how well I've done per se, but, just trying to do my best on what I'm given to do every day. And seeing what comes from that, I suppose. Leaving myself open to, unexpected things coming my way, and hopefully good things.
Yeah.
Because
definitely,
we all have unexpected bad things too. But
yeah, sure. But it's definitely a way to keep yourself young. I mean, starting out on a whole new career, when you're in your early 40s and learning a whole new it's a different like way of thinking, and learning new tools and skill sets, right?
Yeah, and I think there's obviously it's pretty standard that most people think of like career,
right.
And I don't know, it's weird, like I kind of don't know if I think of acting or writing or even law as careers. I'm sure that most people do. I think that also, if I think about them that way, it's super depressing, because I could also look at this as like, well, here's my acting career. What are my credits? What's my writing career? Yeah, okay, you got a couple of books, which is, nothing to shake a stick at. What's my legal career? You're way older than most people, and you're starting at the bottom.
Yeah.
So I kind of don't think of them like career. I kind of think of them as like, I don't know, almost like things that I do that I want to be better at.
Yeah.
Like part of like my skill set that I'm continuing to refine and improve. And, it's sort of it's a weird thing to look at, but I kind of almost sometimes put myself in the position of somebody who's playing a video game, and I am my own character in the video game or the story.
Yeah.
And I go, what do I want this character to be? How do I want him to be? What stats do I want him to have? I mean, like, you could think of this as like D&D or something too. Like, how do I want him to be physically, emotionally? What skills do I want him to have? There was that game, The Sims, that like the original version came out when we were actually like,
I was so addicted to that.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, study Sims so that I can get money and like, and then hook up with all the other like Sims or whatever, like, but yeah, sometimes I think about things like that. I'm like, how, like, and a lot of this comes with self-help and goal setting. Like, where do I want to be in 10 years? Okay, well, if I'm there in 10 years, what does that mean? Where do I have to be in 5 years to be there? Where do I have to be in 1 year to be there in 5 years? And kind of like thinking about those things, and then actually taking steps in those directions, which is always the hardest part. It's easy to daydream what you want, but it's always harder to actually figure out the steps. But so I don't always think about it like a career. I sort of think about it like my character in a weird,
interesting, like
meta acting way.
That's cool. That's a cool way to think about it. It's interesting. Well, let me also ask you, I always ask my guests 2 questions. The first is, what advice do you have for anybody who is like just coming up in their art or their acting career or whatever, or maybe they've decided to change careers and now they're giving it a shot in their middle age? Do you have any advice for those folks?
Well, first of all, I don't think you should be taking any advice from me, but I would say if you're, I mean, like, and some way to think about that too is, although so much has changed from when we were coming up, like, what could I tell myself when I was like 20? There's so much, but I would say, I mean, first of all, when you say like, what advice would you give to somebody who's just starting out? First of all, what is it you want to do? Because my answer is going to change based on what that is.
Yeah.
Obviously, if somebody wants to be an actor, there are definitely like steps that you should take. And if somebody wants to be a writer, there are other steps that might be similar but different depending on what kind of writer you want to be.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, it's sort of weird. What I would say is pursue your dream. Definitely have like a picture of what the end goal looks like in mind.
Yeah.
Work your way backwards. But one of the things that I wish I had done probably was figure out this like alternate career that serves that goal earlier. So that, because, as much as the problem is like when you're young and dumb, as much as they tell you the statistics of like, only 1% of actors make money, actually doing the thing that they want to do.
Yeah.
Like that kind of just washes over people's heads, because you just go, well, that's not going to be me, like, I'm going to make it or whatever. And you just don't realize how competitive it is. And like, so
And then it actually
finding,
takes hard work. It's a business. You have to,
yeah,
yeah. I definitely came up with
yeah,
that mentality of like, I'm just gonna like go on my first audition and be discovered. No, it doesn't work
yeah.
that way.
And I know a lot of people too who were like big fishes in small ponds and then moved to LA and were like, here I am, and everyone's like, no one cares. And like,
Yeah.
they were kind of just sat around and waited for like, waited to book the role or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, so it's one of these things where it's like, find something that like pays money that you don't hate, because
Mm-hmm.
you don't necessarily have to love it, but you should like it and enjoy
Yeah.
it, and like gives you a good solid foundation and frees you up enough to pursue the artistic side of things
Yeah.
as much as possible. And that's probably like my main piece of advice,
Yeah.
as I'm this age and where I'm at.
I
I
think
wish I
that's
had done
solid
that
advice.
sooner. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really solid advice. Honestly, I think I would probably give the same advice because I wish I had set myself up in a better place to be able to pursue it, and not have the pressure of making money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned that a
and
little late.
it'll only help your acting career. I think that the
Yeah.
biggest problem is that like there's this sort of this belief that if you do anything else, or if you have some other career, that you're not really
Mhm.
doing the acting stuff,
Yeah.
and like you can't be an artist.
Mhm.
And it's just not true, and it can't be true anymore because of the way the
Yeah.
business is. So um hopefully you find something. It doesn't have to be related to acting, but I mean, that's what I'm looking for, is something that can augment, whether that's
Yeah.
because you're networking with people who are in the industry, be they producers or writers or whatever. um but it can be something totally unrelated, like if you're a yoga teacher.
Mhm.
um and even then it's like, who knows, maybe you're a yoga teacher, and somebody who is famous comes to your class, and then you get hooked up with their agent, and you never know.
Yeah.
So at least in LA you don't know, but
Yeah.
find that other thing that gives you a solid foundation, and the financial resources to pursue the artistic side.
Yeah.
um and then, as far the second question was more about like advice to somebody beginning a second career.
Yeah.
I think the only piece of advice I can give there is like, don't care about what other people say, and it's never too late to expand your horizons.
Yeah.
um so I know that sounds cliche as well, but if the problem, it's more of a psychological thing, because if you focus on the fact that you're too old to do something, or you can't learn something new, or it's going to be too hard for you because you're this age and you're starting at a low point, well, then you're just going to quit. It's like,
Yeah.
any of these things where you're wanting to exact a change, whether it's like losing weight or something, like
Mhm.
if the mentality is, I'm too old and I can't do that, well, then where does that leave you?
Yeah.
Just giving up, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as much as you can focus on just like the step in front of you and saying like, hey, this is something I want to do, and going for it, that I mean, that's the best thing you can do, really.
Yeah. I think that's great. Okay, well, now my last question I always ask
Okay.
everyone is, what does
All right.
making it mean to you? And maybe that's different
Making it.
now than it was
Ooh.
when you were younger, but what does success look like to you?
Oh, I wish I could say it was just like being emotionally fulfilled, and you know, but I really want lots of money, and I want the accolades given to
Yeah.
me from all my peers telling
Uh-huh.
me how wonderful I am. I mean, like,
Yeah.
on some level, it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
You kind of go through Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Uh-huh.
and once you have your sort of like base level things met, like, okay, I've got food, I've got shelter, I'm not in a war zone,
Right.
I'm pretty good. Like, anybody who's living in the Western Hemisphere, particularly in North America, particularly in the United States. We have a hell of a lot luckier than a lot of people. And even that's not a guarantee. Like you could say, because you look around our town here, there's a lot of homelessness. It's, impacted our city pretty hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm pretty grateful every day just being born into a privileged position that I'm in, and that means like being able to live in an apartment that has electricity and stuff like that. I mean, like it really is privileged. I know it doesn't feel that way often, but once you have those needs met, and this was part of my conversation coming back from Singapore, it was part of my self conversation when I was thinking about transitioning to go to law school.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to be, I want to earn a certain amount of money. I want to be able to upgrade my lifestyle, but also upgrade myself in terms of my intellectual capabilities. And I would like to receive, feedback from my peers. And that's like those things together kind of are making it. And, perhaps I'm not enlightened enough, but eventually I do know that like giving those things to yourself is probably the most important. So if other people can give that to you, great, but like you got to be able to give that to yourself as well. So yeah, it's weird, like having financial success and the esteem of other people, but also being able to be grateful for what you have and enjoy your life is making it.
I think that's great. I think that's great. It's
cool.
Everybody has a different.
How'd I do? Did I do okay?
You did great. You did great.
Good.
I'm going to give you a gold star.
All right.
Everybody has a slightly different definition. And what I love is that people are honest about where they're at. And like, I have some guests who, like you said, are like, oh, as long as I'm like telling good stories and I'm with community, then I've made it. Right. And I've had other people like, I still want the fame. I still want the money. And that's what making it would mean to me. So it's for everybody. Everybody has a different feeling about it. And I think it's all wonderful.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, fame is weird because it's become so like that. The definition of what that means, like is kind of different, when you've got like influencers and stuff. And I think the older you get, like the more divorced you get from that kind of like, look at me, like sense of fame. But you do want to be able to do the work. So like if you, whether it's being a lawyer or an actor or a writer, people kind of at least have to know a little bit who you are in order for you to be able to like continue to do the thing. Yeah. So for me, definitely doing the thing is more important than knowing who I am, because I want to be, but I want to be able to do those things. So they're intertwined a little bit. I've never been somebody, I think, who just wants notoriety. Yeah. I want enough that I can like do the things that I love to do and hopefully get paid to do them. Like that's sort of the, and that, I mean, I guess that's also like making it in a nutshell, being able to do the things that you love to do and get paid to do them. That's like, that's
making
pretty much
it, right?
Yeah, that's basically making it. Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Well, this has been so great. Do you want people to follow you? Yeah, where can people follow? I don't know. Some people have private social media.
Yeah, I'm not really on Twitter. Like I kind of went just back on Instagram just to promote this movie that I'm in now. So you can watch This Land. It's on Amazon Prime, I think, among other streaming video on demand platforms. Again, This Land, and it has like you'll recognize it because it has big like Aztec mask thing as the poster. I do have a website. I'm www.adamburch.net. So that's ADAMBURCH.net. And you can leave a comment. Awesome. I'll answer it. You can go on Amazon and look up Song of Edmund, which is my first book. And the second book is called Roar of the Storm. They're sort of like a duology, and you can pick up a copy or listen to my book on audio, leave a comment, but only if it's 5 stars.
Yeah.
If it's a 5-star review, you can leave a comment. Otherwise, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
those are some good places you can find.
Awesome. And I will link all of that in the show notes so people can easily find all of this. Adam, it's been so good to see you again. Thank you so much for giving me your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm excited for everything. Yeah. Let's talk again soon.
Yeah. Next time I go to Singapore, I'll have to invite you to the
to
the bar. Right?
We'll all go to the bar again.
Right, no, sooner than that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode. You can check out Adam and This Land on Amazon or buy his book, Song of Edmund, also available on Amazon. If you want to know more about Adam, check out his website, adamburch.net, and I will link all of this in the show notes as always. If you're enjoying the show, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. And please share the show with your friends. We love some word of mouth. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at makingitafter40, the number 40, and to catch up on what I'm doing when I'm not podcasting, check out my Instagram at Lisa Rodriguez. Thank you all for listening and have an excellent week.